Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today I thought I'd do a video on a question that a few of you have asked me, and that is, what is my procedure? Like, what are my habits or my procedures for, when I do a reading? I call them my idiosyncrasies because I'm a pretty idiosyncratic individual. But these are the things that I do religiously, without fail, and since the beginning. So they stuck with me. The first thing since the beginning is I wash my hands, and anyone who enters this tarot parlor has to wash their hands, even my grandbabies. Even though they don't handle and touch the cards, the idea is that they're about to enter a very special place, right? I think washing your hands in the beginning, washing the hands for me, it just meant that I was going to be respectful of my cards and not destroy them. I wouldn't get sweat on them. I wouldn't get, food things on them. I wouldn't get the grease on my hands on them. And it's really served me well. I mean, I'm going to show you, case in point. I'm going to show you the first deck I ever owned. Let me flip the camera. Okay, here's the first deck I ever owned, the 1JJ Swiss. This one by A.G. Mueller for U.S. Game Systems, Inc. I think the pamphlet inside says 1970, so it's really 54 years old. Now, I've only had it since 1975 or 76, so it's like 49 years old. But look at this deck. There's not a smudge on this deck. It speaks to the quality of the deck also, because I've used it for sure. In fact, it's really held up amazingly. I don't know if they changed the recipe, if it's still as high quality as this, but I mean, I could go through the entire deck. You won't see a smudge. You won't see a thing. And I know it's in part because I insist on washing hands. And as I mentioned, I think in the beginning it was because I was fussy and I didn't want my cards being damaged or stained or anything. And none of them are. Even, the ones that are cheaply, if the card stock is not very high quality or whatever, maybe the corners fray or whatever, but that's just wear and tear, But as far as damage to the cards, none of them will. So it was a practice that served me well. And I think too, it's a signal to people. You're not going to come into my tarot parlor until you wash your hands, because something special is about to happen. So I guess, it signals to me that, I'm going into my sacred space, and it signals to other people that I take this space seriously. So check your bullshit at the door. You know what I'm saying? So wash your hands and show my cards and myself some respect. So that's number one. Most of you, I'm sure, have noticed that when I'm about to do a reading, I'll knock the deck twice. I never read that you had to knock the deck. I never even read that you had to clear the deck, besides, shuffling a deck, which is just common sense, right? But after I handle and mix the cards, since day one, I've always knocked it twice. I don't know where it came from. It's just me. It's just something that I came up with. So I don't know what purpose I don't even think I had a purpose. I just think it was just something that I did naturally, and I just knocked the deck twice, and that was that. So it's just something I do. I don't even think about it. I just do it. Along with washing my hands before I enter the space, or somebody else, even if they don't handle my cards, even if we're just entering my tarot parlor, they're washing their hands, because at some point it's possible that I'll tear out a deck and they'll want to look at it, or if I do a reading for them, if they want to participate and handle the cards, their hands have to be clean. So even if the intention isn't for them to touch the cards, they still have to wash their hands, because you never know, they just might. And along those lines, no food or drink. Now, I've lightened up on that on myself in recent years, because with doing because food and drink, of course, can soil your cards. And, you know, I cringe when I ever see people, you know, photographs of like Instagram where people have a cup of coffee next to their cards. I'm like, what, are you crazy? Never, I would never do such a thing. However, in recent years, I have acquiesced to myself, because if I sit here for 5 or 6 hours knocking out videos on the days when I don't have my grandchildren, that I'm watching them, right? I have to sit here for prolonged periods of time. So what I've done in those cases now is I get like a large grown-up sippy cup that even if I knock it over with flashing my hands, I won't do any damage. And when I do that, you know, with a cup of water or a cup of tea, I'll keep it like on the floor or someplace where I can't accidentally knock it over, and then I just pick it up, take a sip, and put it back. But ideally, I mean, for probably 47 out of almost 50 years, I've strictly no food, absolutely no food, but definitely no drink, until recently when I caught on that I could buy a grown-up sippy cup, and that eliminates that problem. As far as shuffling, now I did release a video 2, 3, 4 years ago about my process, and I used it initially, you know. However, I no longer use it, and I want to be honest with you, I don't do that process because I learned that it's just too tedious, you know. I had to, the reason I came up with it was because I had to have a process by which I knew when it ended, you know, because if you're an idiosyncratic person or, you know, compulsive person, which I can tend to be, I would always say, well, I'll know when to stop because it'll feel right. And in those days, I overhand shuffled, you know, I didn't really riffle shuffle. So I'll know when it feels right. I'll know when it feels right. And then it was always like, well, one more. Oh, well, it doesn't feel right. One more. And I was like, come on, this is nuts. I'm driving myself crazy. So then I had to come up with a system. So then I came up with this elaborate system, which just took too much time because, you know, it's feast or famine. Those of you who do tarot, you probably experience that. Some days I won't have any readings at all. Some days I'll get, you know, 3 or 4. Now for me, I limit myself to 4 a day. And, you know, and if on days when I have my grandbabies and I have to catch up at night when they're gone, I don't prefer to do readings at night, but I'll stay up at night and do readings after they're in bed for clients. But I have to have an efficient way of mixing the cards. And so I came up with this. Somewhere I read for regular playing cards, you have to riffle shuffle 7 times to efficiently clear the order of a deck of 52 cards that's been put in order. So my math might be lacking, and those of you who are good in math may say, Marilyn, your math is off. And if it is, please tell me. But when I tried to do a 7 to 52 ratio to 78 cards, I came up with 10.5. So of course you can't shuffle a deck 10.5 times. So I'll riffle shuffle a deck if it's possible to riffle shuffle a particular deck. Not all decks can be riffle shuffled because they're too big for my hand and I just can't do it. But if it's a deck that can be handled, like if I can riffle shuffle it, I'll riffle shuffle it 11 times. So pretend that was 11. I'll riffle shuffle it 11 times, and then I'll give it an overhand 7 times. You know, I'll just give it, you know, that. And that's it. 11 riffle shuffles and 7 overhand. Now, when I'm about to go on camera, either for you guys or for a client, sometimes, you know, I don't know, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes if I do readings for a client, I think I usually always show me laying the cards out. So I think I do it for them too. I just don't, you do something automatically, you don't remember what you do. But I always will on camera show maybe another 3 or 4 shuffles, just so you guys all know that it's not a stacked deck. I haven't prearranged the cards so that as I'm about to do the reading, you know, it's a fresh thing, you know. Then, the process I use when I handle and mix the cards is I go into a meditative place, you know, and it's a big part of it. I do it off camera whenever I do videos for you guys because it takes time. But, you know, as I'm riffle shuffling and overhanding shuffling 11 and 7 times, I'll, be meditative the whole time. I'm focusing on the question at hand, and I ask the universe to tell either myself or my client or whoever I'm doing the reading for what we need to know to benefit, to maximum benefit. I don't always feel it's, everything is our business, and I don't always feel like everything's my business. Just how a situation affects me or the client. What is it that we need to know, to either bring justice or to help, or, to help bring something to its best possible conclusion. So that happens while I'm mixing and handling the cards. And I take it very seriously, I won't lay the cards until I've established between myself and the universe what my intent is, how many cards I intend to lay. That's all part of it. So that goes on. And it's funny, in the beginning, I think I read this somewhere where, sleep with your cards under your pillow, And I think I did that like once or twice, and I got over it really quick because it made me nervous, because I didn't want them to get lost or bent, and I certainly didn't want to destroy the box. So then, in those days they told you to put it in a sack. It's a miracle that I have this box, and for many of my decks I don't, but for some reason I kept my original deck in its box, and I was fussy about it, and I thankfully I am, but I have at least a dozen decks over there that were purchased in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and I just had them in sacks, and I regret it deeply. But I found, like, if I put it under the pillow in a sack, because that was more comfortable than sleeping on a block, right? Then my cards might get bent, or they might get like lost or something, and so that didn't feel good to me. So I stopped doing that. Then I think I also read about like putting the cards under the moon, or charging them like regularly. And I sometimes I do that. Like if I think that there's going to be a full moon and I think of it and I remember it, I'll put a deck that I might use the next day under a nice, beautiful piece of quartz. Sometimes I charge my decks under selenite, a few sticks of selenite, But that's all. And then sometimes, I'll put a few decks on the window ledge and just let the moon get all of them, And then my tarot parlor, I just open the doors of the cabinets that they're in. I don't take them all out. I have hundreds of decks. I can't put them all on the window ledge, But I don't really concern myself too much with that kind of stuff. Only if my instincts say do it tonight, or something like that. But otherwise, I don't really concern myself with that. And I guess that's about all I do. If you think of a question or something that I might not have touched on, that might be like a process or a procedure, then feel free to contact me. I'm really, really good at answering all my comments. I think there are very few comments that I don't answer. And the only reason I might not answer them is because I don't notice them or I'm unaware of them. Sometimes I think when a comment is made and then I answer it and then the person comes back and makes a comment, or somebody else comes back and makes a comment. Sometimes, like, the more comments that are in a thread, it gets a little harder to find, but I do make an effort, and I think most of you will agree that I'm pretty good at answering comments. So you can always comment or ask me a question under any given video, and I will answer it if I see it. And if more than a day goes by and I didn't answer it, it's because I didn't see it, in which case you can always send me an email. My email is tarotclarity@gmail.com. tarotclarity@gmail. So I'm really easy to find. Just put something in the subject line so I don't delete it, so I don't think it's like spam, because I usually don't answer. I don't even usually open any emails if I don't recognize. But if you say, a name that I'm familiar with, if I've spoken to you on comments before, you can put your name, or you can just say, I'm watching your YouTube video or something that lets me know that you're from my YouTube channel or something like that. But otherwise, you can always just comment and I'll answer. I think those are it. Those cover my processes and my idiosyncrasies. I hope this has been insightful to you. Now, bear in mind, just because I do these things doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's, what you need to do. It's just me. It's just what I do. It's just what I've come up with, my own little idiosyncratic processes, and it changes in time, like they're like the way I handled and mixed the cards, that changed it evolved over the years. I think if you just remain stagnant in with certain things, you never grow or you never change, and you can adapt. If you know better, you do better. The only thing that I've had from the beginning is washing the hands and knocking twice. No food and drink, except with the exception of a sippy cup. And I've been consistent with those things since day one, And I've gotten, as far as the meditative part, in the beginning, I would have just been like, I'd ask a question and lay the cards, and I wouldn't really go into a meditative place. I just really wouldn't take myself there. And some of the readings I do, especially if I'm doing something that has to do with life or death or an answer that could affect people deeply, I want to approach the universe with absolute respect. And whether or not somebody believes in the outcome of a tarot reading, it's up to you, But I think for me, it's kind of like a way I pray. But, I pray. Well, spells are prayers. I mean, what are prayers? Prayers are spells. Who are we kidding? You do this with the incense and you go around the church. What do you think that is? It's a spell. So when we pray, we cast spells. And I think the universe understands that I'm deeply sincere when I ask for clarity, and I'll ask for clarity while I'm walking down the street, and I can ask just like that, and I don't have to read cards, and the answers will come to me, or the information will come to me, but you have to listen sometimes. You just have to really listen. And I think sometimes the cards help me listen, because the cards will put before me thoughts that maybe I hadn't thought of already. Sometimes they put down the thoughts that I'm thinking, and it validates that you're on the right path. But then sometimes it gives you a completely different answer, and then I didn't see it coming. And I listen to that too, and I consider, okay, well, there's a chance that that's the answer. And sometimes I'll just walk, or I'll lay there, or I'll look out at the clouds, and I'll just ask the universe to bring about a best possible outcome, or to give me insight and give me vision. And I don't need the cards at all. I'll get my information. But the cards has been a staple for me for a long time. Anyway, I hope this has been insightful to you. And until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.